Before we start, I want to kindly thank August for buying us a cuppa since the last video. It's always appreciated. In the mid-19th century, as Europe was dealing with revolutionary fervour and the march of industrialisation, one monarch stood resolute in defence of tradition, sovereignty and the divine right of kings, King Ludwig II of Bavaria, who reigned from 1864 to 1886, and he was no ordinary ruler. Known as the Swan King, he dedicated his life to preserving Bavaria's unique identity, resisting the encroachments of Prussian domination and liberal ideologies that sought to erode the monarchy authority. His castles, his patronage and his defiance remain symbols of a lost era when kings ruled by divine mandate. He was a tragic hero, a man who fought to uphold Bavarian heritage and tradition against the tides of centralisation and modernity, because you know who brought them in. Let's have a look at his life. Ludwig Otto Friedrich Wilhelm von Wittelsbach was born on August 25, 1845 at Nymphenburg Palace, Lowell, the heart of the Kingdom of Bavaria. As the eldest son of King Maximilian II and Princess Marie of Prussia, Ludwig was heir to the Wittelsbach dynasty, one of Europe's most enduring royal houses, ruling Bavaria since 1180. His birth coincided with the feast day of St. Louis, after whom he was named, and his baptism linked him to the House of Bourbon, not the biscuit. Ludwig's lineage was a sacred trust, a mandate to uphold the divine order of kingship against the rising tide of liberal democracy. Ludwig's childhood was marked by a strict discipline and isolation, designed to prepare him for the burdens of rule. His parents maintained a formal distance, believing it would cultivate independence and royal gravitas. Raised primarily at Holschwangau Castle, Ludwig was surrounded by frescoes depicting Germanic legends, knights, swans and epic battles that shaped his worldview. These stories were not mere entertainment but a call to embody the virtues of chivalry, honour and cultural preservation. At age 15, Ludwig attended a performance of Richard Wagner's Lohengrin, an opera that crystallised his vision of a monarchy rooted in Germanic myth and spiritual grandeur. His education, overseen by military tutors and Catholic clergy, instilled a deep sense of duty and reverence for the Church, which he saw as a bulwark against revolutionary ideologies. Yet, Ludwig's Prussian mother and her ties to the Hohenzollern dynasty foreshadowed the political tensions that would define his reign. From a young age, he understood Bavaria's precarious position, caught between the ambitions of Prussia and Austria. On March 10, 1864, King Maximilian II died suddenly of sepsis at age 53, thrusting 18-year-old Ludwig onto the throne. Bavaria welcomed its new king with fervour. His striking appearance, tall, dark-haired with piercing blue eyes, earned him adoration as a symbol of hope. Yet, Ludwig inherited a kingdom under siege. The German Confederation, a loose alliance of states, was fracturing under the rivalry between Prussia and Austria. Liberal movements across Europe demanded constitutional reforms, threatening the traditional authority of the monarchs. For Ludwig, raised to believe in the divine right of kings, these forces were an affront to his sacred duty. One of Ludwig's first acts of king was to summon Richard Wagner to Munich, fulfilling a promise to support the composer, whose operas embodied Germanic cultural ideals. Between 1864 and 1865, Ludwig funded Wagner's work, enabling premieres like Tristan and Isolde and Die Mettersinger von Nürnberg. Wagner's operas celebrated Germanic heritage, reinforcing Bavaria's distinct identity against Prussian militarism and liberal secularism. Ludwig transformed Munich into a cultural bastion, a beacon of tradition in a rapidly changing world. Politically, however, Ludwig faced insurmountable challenges. In 1866, Bavaria allied with Austria in the Austro-Prussian War, hoping to preserve the German Confederation's autonomy. The defeat at Königgrätz was a disaster, forcing Bavaria into a defensive alliance with Prussia. By 1871, Ludwig was compelled to support the creation of the German Empire under Wilhelm I and Otto von Bismarck, effectively reducing Bavaria to a subordinate state. His reluctance to engage in court politics was not apathy, but a rejection of a system that diminished a God-given authority. Instead, he focused on what he could control, the preservation of Bavaria's cultural and spiritual legacy. After 1871, with Bavaria subsumed into the German Empire, Ludwig withdrew from Munich's political intrigues, channeling his energies into architectural projects that would define his legacy. His castles, Neuschwanstein, Linderhof, and Herrenchiemsee, which I haven't pronounced properly, were not mere indulgences but deliberate acts of resistance against the erosion of Bavarian identity. Neuschwanstein, begun in 1869 near Füssen, was a medieval-inspired fortress, its interiors adorned with murals from Wagner's operas like Tannhäuser and Lohengrin. It embodied Ludwig's vision of Bavaria, rooted in chivalric ideals, untouched by industrial progress. Linderhof, completed in 1878, was a neo-Rococo masterpiece, its opulent interiors echoing Versailles and the absolutist reign of King Louis XIV. Herrenchiemsee, started in 1878, featured a hall of mirrors surpassing its French counterpart, a tribute to divine monarchy. Ludwig funded these projects with his own money, estimated at 30 million marks annually, refusing to burden state coffers. By 1886, his debts reached 40 million marks, a figure critics used to paint him as reckless or mad. These castles were investments in cultural permanence, defying the transient values of liberalism and industrialisation. Today, Neuschwanstein alone generates over 100 million annually in tourism revenue, vindicating Ludwig. Ludwig's obsession with detail, dispatching architects to study European palaces, commissioning artists to recreate medieval aesthetics, reflected in his belief that a king's duty was to inspire through beauty and tradition, in an era when political autonomy was lost. Critics, often aligned with Prussia or liberal interests, we know what that means, mocked them as fantasies, but Ludwig's supporters argue they were acts of defiance, preserving a cultural heritage that outlasted the German Empire itself. Ludwig's personal life was marked by intense privacy and a commitment to his role as king. A devout Catholic, he adhered to the Church's moral teachings, though some say his diaries hint that he was a bit of a bender, but there is no actual fact in that. His brief engagement to Duchess Sophie Charlotte in 1867 ended after repeated postponements, a decision due to his prioritising his divine role over personal fulfilment. His closest confidant was Empress Elizabeth of Austria, his cousin, with whom he shared a disdain for court life and a love for solitude and nature. Ludwig's personal preference for rural retreats over Munich's court were not a retreat, but a return to Bavaria's roots. He travelled extensively, staying in mountain huts and rewarding peasants with lavish gifts, gold watches, silver coins for their hospitality. This connection to the land and its people endeared him to rural Bavarians, who saw him as a monarch who valued their traditions over urban elites. Ludwig's rejection of bureaucratic court life was a principled stand against the centralising forces that sought to dilute the monarch's authority. His ministers, however, grew resentful, viewing his disengagement as a failure of leadership, setting the stage for his downfall. By 1886, Ludwig's enemies, led by his uncle Prince Leopold and ministers like Count Maximilian von Hohenstein, saw an opportunity to remove him. They accused him of mental instability, citing his reclusive lifestyle and architectural projects as evidence of insanity. A medical report authored by Dr. Bernhard von Gudden declared Ludwig unfit without ever examining him, relying on testimonies coerced from servants. On June 10, 1886, Ludwig was deposed and Leopold assumed the regency. This was a coup orchestrated by the elites and the Prussian sympathisers who sought to align Bavaria with the German Empire's centralised vision. On June 12th, Ludwig was taken to Berg Castle on Lake Starnberg. The next day, June 13th, 1886, he and Dr. Gudden were found dead in the lake's shallow waters. The official report claimed suicide by drowning, but Ludwig was an accomplished swimmer, and autopsies found no water in his lungs. Eyewitness accounts, including those from Countess Josephine von Kobel, reported bullet holes in Ludwig's coat, fueling that it was an assassination, rather than suicide in 3 inches of water. Some speculate Prussian agents or Ludwig's own ministers, fearing his resistance to their agenda, orchestrated his murder. Ludwig's death was the ultimate betrayal, a monarch martyred for his unwavering commitment to Bavarian sovereignty and traditional rule. Ludwig II's death at 40 didn't diminish his legacy, it immortalised it. His castles, once derided as follies, are now global treasures. In Bavaria, Ludwig remains the Kinney, a folk hero revered in annual memorials at Lake Starnberg and bonfires in Obergamau or something. His vision of a monarchy rooted in cultural and spiritual grandeur resonates from those who cherish tradition over progress. He was a bulwark against the forces of centralisation and liberalism, a king who sacrificed himself to preserve Bavaria's soul. His life, as he wished, remains an enigma, but his legacy is clear, a defiant stand for sovereignty, heritage, and the divine right of kings. If only he was alive today, and indeed, only alive in 1939. So there you have it. Next time you see these twats spouting off on YouTube, go in their comments and tell them what they are. Until next time, ta-ta for now. And remember, if you build it, they will come. If you enjoyed this video, or you thought it's slightly less shit than all the others, you can always buy us a Cuppa on Ko-fi. The link's in the description below, and thank you in advance if you do.